Painting yourself is one of the most vulnerable things you can do as an artist. Not just because of the technical challenge, but because it forces you to see yourself in ways you might not be used to. For my final BFA project, I'm creating a self-portrait that focuses on my body rather than my face. And honestly, that comes with its own set of emotions. Today, as I work on this piece, I want to talk about the vulnerability of self-portraiture and share some tips, both technical and emotional, that have helped me feel more comfortable with the process. Hi everyone, if you don't know me, my name is Cora, or you can call me by my art name Azure. I'm a painter, illustrator, animator, and comic designer. I think like many of you, self-portraits are one of the most hardest things to draw or paint or do any sort of medium with as an artist. You're literally showcasing yourself on a page, and maybe even though it's not open for others to see, it's still a very vulnerable feeling. At this very time, I only have 14 weeks left of college, and these pieces behind me and that you're going to see me work on are being displayed in a museum along with my other BFA cohorts. So this work of myself is quite literally going to be seen by hundreds. And that's terrifying. And I've gotten asked a couple of times during critiques how it feels to paint yourself and knowing that this work is going to be put into a museum. How do you get over the nerves and that feeling of fear of judgment? As I think it's very normal for everyone to have insecurities within themselves. I know I do. So today I wanted to share with you some tips that I've learned over the course of a year working on this self-portrait and allowing yourself to let go within this process, while also covering the topics on how to even go about painting your own self-portrait or drawing your own self-portrait, whatever you want to do with your self-portrait. So sit back and let's cover these topics together. Self-portraits can be intimidating, not just because they require you to paint yourself, but because they ask you to really look at who you are. And that can bring up all kinds of feelings. I hated self-portraits because of this reason. Heck, I used to hate painting, but that's a whole other conversation. Maybe you're painting yourself and feeling uncertain about certain features. Maybe there's discomfort in seeing yourself on the canvas. That's completely normal. And today, I want to talk about how to work through that. Focus on shapes, not judgment. One of the biggest mental hurdles in self-portraiture is separating your perception of yourself from the actual process of painting. Instead of thinking about how you should look, try to focus on how shapes, colors, and shadows interact. Start with the big, loose shapes rather than immediately trying to capture detail. When I begin a self-portrait, I block in broad areas of color, almost abstractly, before refining anything. This helps me see my body as a series of forms, rather than a reflection in the mirror. If something feels intimidating, try flipping your reference image upside down and painting that way for a bit. It tricks your brain into focusing on shape rather than personal attachment. Work from general to specific, painting to simplify the shapes and values. The details will come later, but the foundation has to be solid first. A strong structure underneath gives you more freedom to play with the detail and texture later on. Experiment with composition to change perspective. A self-portrait doesn't have to be a traditional centered image. It can be cropped, fragmented, abstracted. You don't have to show everything. You can focus on the parts that feel the most meaningful to you, as seen within my own self-portrait here, where I only wanted the focus to be from the thighs up to the shoulder line, which within my theme of discussion plays an important role within my pieces. If composition feels overwhelming, take a few photos of yourself and play with cropping. Ultimately, that is how I found the perfect web of flow for my piece. See how focusing on just your hands, shoulders, or the curve of your back changes the feeling of the image. Let the composition guide the emotion. Also, don't feel like you have to finish every section. Leaving some areas more abstract or loosely painted can add movement and energy to the piece. Sometimes what's left out is just as powerful as what's included. Use light, color, and shadow to change perspective. If painting yourself feels too confrontational, change the lighting to shift your perspective. A dramatic light source can make things feel less personal and more like an exploration of shapes and depth. Try using directional lighting, something from the side or below, to create striking shadows. Strong contrast can help separate light from dark, making the painting feel sculptural. You can also experiment with colored lighting. Using a red or blue tinted light changes how skin tones appear, making it easier to detach from realism and focus on mood instead. I wanted my piece to be vibrant and full of saturation, which doesn't necessarily produce a hyper-realistic look, which wasn't my goal to begin with. This can even play into the lines of color choices and intentional characteristics of your piece as well. In my self-portrait, I'm not only playing with saturation, but with fluorescent paint in UV lighting and iridescent paint when in natural lighting. This adds an element of play within my piece that doesn't just draw my own personal attention to my form or figure. For an even more painterly effect, you can start with an underpainting in an opposite temperature from your final skin tones. If you plan to use warm tones, you can begin with a cooler layer of blues or purples, which can help balance the warmth later on and give the painting a richer depth or play with contrast and saturation. Let go of idealized proportions. One of the hardest things about painting yourself is unlearning all the ways we've been taught to see ourselves. When you paint a self-portrait, there's often an instinct to correct things, to make features look more conventionally attractive or symmetrical, but self-portraiture is about honesty, not perfection. If you find yourself overcorrecting, try exaggerating proportions instead. Stretch the curves, push the angles, allow some things to be softer or sharper than you think they should be. This helps you break out of the ingrained ideas of how you're supposed to look and instead lets you explore what feels expressive. A great exercise is doing quick gesture drawings of yourself. Set a timer for 1 to 2 minutes and capture movement rather than precision. This builds confidence in your lines and helps you trust the shapes that naturally emerge without self-correcting too much. Also, remember that symmetry isn't everything. Faces and bodies are naturally asymmetrical. Lean into that. It's what makes self-portraits feel alive rather than stiff. Let the process be emotional. A bit more of a real talk, but I think this is something that's important to think about as an artist. Self-portraits aren't just about technique. They bring up emotions, and that's okay. There might be moments when you feel disconnected from what you're painting, or even frustrated. Self-portraits have a way of reflecting our emotions back at us. But instead of fighting that, try to channel it into your painting. Your brushwork can express feeling just as much as color or composition. If you're feeling frustrated, try using a palette knife or a dry brush for rougher, more textured marks. If you want a sense of softness, use your fingers or cloth to blend edges. The way you apply paint can reflect your emotions in a powerful way. Also, don't be afraid to take breaks. Stepping away and coming back later can help reset your perspective. Seeing your work fresh, whether in a mirror, from across the room, or even just after a break, can reveal things you didn't notice before. Let go of the final result. While the hardest part within my final pieces was knowing when it was finished, or if I was even ready to step away, this is the biggest thing that's helped me. Self-portraits aren't about creating a perfect version of yourself. They're about exploration. Try working in layers instead of committing too quickly. Use thin glazes at first so you can build up depth gradually. If something doesn't feel right, you can adjust it without losing everything underneath. If you're really struggling with a section, cover it with the translucent layer of a single color, then wipe away the highlights. This gives you a fresh start without erasing everything, and it can help reset your approach. Most importantly, allow yourself to make mistakes. The act of painting yourself, seeing yourself, engaging with yourself is the point, not perfection. Self-portraiture can be vulnerable, but that vulnerability is what makes it powerful. The more you allow yourself to see yourself as art, the more honest and freeing the process becomes. They're gone. If you've been meaning to paint your self-portrait and haven't yet, I hope this gives you a place to start. It's different, it's vulnerable, but let it be that way. Let it be imperfect, let it be uncomfortable, let it be free, let it be crazy, let it be unique, let it be yours. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye!